My name is Michaela T. Powell, and I am 34 years old. I came in through the side door of my parents' house and heard my uncle say she's just here to feel important. My mom replied, "Yeah, poor thing, thinks money makes her family." I wasn't supposed to come in through the side door. I usually didn't, but the front porch was blocked with rusty folding chairs, stacked like someone forgot the barbecue ended 2 weeks ago. I didn't feel like dragging them out of the way, so I went around. The side door creaked the way it always had and smelled faintly like potting soil and old paint. The house was loud, a blender running somewhere, overlapping voices. My mom's laugh mixed with another voice, deeper, slower, my Uncle Mike. I wasn't trying to sneak in. I just hadn't said hi yet. Then I heard him say it clearly, like it wasn't even gossip, like it was a fact. "She's just here to feel important." There was a pause, short but deliberate, and then my mom answered, "Yeah, poor thing thinks money makes her family." I stopped just inside the mudroom with my keys still in my hand. Something in my chest went still, not sharp, not angry, just empty, like a support beam finally snapped. I walked in. My mom turned first. Her face went pale the way it does when someone gets caught taking something they didn't earn. Uncle Mike stared at the floor like the crumbs suddenly mattered more than I did. "You're right," I said, "which is why this family won't see another dollar from me ever." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't wait for anyone to recover. I left before they could explain it away. What made it worse was that I'd spent the last 6 months bending over backwards for these people quietly, without fanfare. My sister Megan had racked up $4,000 in credit card debt after her boyfriend skipped town, and I paid it off without telling anyone. My parents' heating system broke in October, $12,200, and my mom cried when I sent the money and called me a godsend. That was 2 months ago. But suddenly I was just here to feel important. It wasn't the first sideways comment I'd ever heard, but it was the first time they said it when they thought I couldn't hear. There's a difference. I didn't even feel angry at first. Just hollow, like something I'd been bracing against for years finally gave up. I didn't go home. I went to a hotel near the mall. Nothing fancy, just a place with thin walls and a flickering TV. I lay there with the sound muted and realized I couldn't remember the last time I visited my parents without paying for something. Groceries, gifts, flights, repairs, even the wine at Christmas was mine. And still they managed to twist it into something ugly. The next day I turned my phone off. The day after that I turned it back on. 32 messages, most from my mom. One from Uncle Mike, just a thumbs up emoji for some reason. 2 from Megan saying call me and nothing else. And 1 from my brother Dave. He never says much, but when he does, I listen. He said, "I know they were out of line, but you disappearing won't fix it either." He was trying. He just didn't get it. I wasn't disappearing. I was changing. I'd gotten used to believing love had to be earned. That if I just gave enough, fixed enough, supported enough, they'd finally see me differently. Instead, it only made them comfortable and entitled. So I stopped answering money requests. I didn't show up to Megan's birthday dinner, even though I was in town. I let my dad deal with the cable bill mess he usually asked me to fix. When my mom called asking if I could help pay for new patio furniture before the spring sales ended, I said no, just no. No excuse. There was silence on the line, and then she said, "Okay." It was the first time she didn't argue back. The shift didn't come cleanly. At first they just got colder, shorter texts, fewer photos in the family group chat. Megan even blocked me for a while. Then something unexpected happened. My dad started calling just to ask how I was doing. Not to ask for help, just to talk. My mom texted me a photo of a pie she baked and said she used the recipe I sent her last year and it actually turned out okay. They didn't thank me for what I'd done, not yet, but they stopped treating me like a safety net and started treating me like a person. I wasn't expecting that. What I also wasn't expecting was who couldn't stand it. Uncle Mike. I didn't know it yet, but he was just getting started. The first hint came quietly, the way most real shifts do, without warning or drama. It showed up in the spaces where money used to be. No more texts asking if I could spot someone until Friday. No casual mentions of a bill that just happened to be overdue. At first, I thought they were waiting me out, letting the tension cool so things could go back to normal. But days passed, then weeks, and something else replaced the silence. Uncertainty. I didn't show up to Megan's birthday dinner that month, even though I was in town. I drove past the restaurant once, saw her car parked out front, lights glowing warm through the windows, and kept going. I expected my phone to buzz with guilt or anger. It didn't. When my dad's cable bill got messed up and the internet went out for a day, he didn't call me. He handled it himself. That alone told me more than any apology ever had. When my mom called, asking if I could help pay for new patio furniture before the spring sales ended, her tone was casual, practiced, like she expected the usual yes. I said no. Just no. I didn't explain. I didn't soften it. There was a pause long enough that I thought the call might drop. Then she said, okay. No argument, no sigh, no guilt. We talked about the weather for another minute and hung up. I stared at my phone afterward like it had just spoken back to me. That should have been the end of it. Clean, quiet. But families don't adjust that easily. At first they pulled back. Texts got shorter. Group chat photos slowed. Megan blocked me for a while, which I only noticed because I stopped seeing her stories. It stung more than I expected, not because I missed the pictures, but because it felt like punishment for not playing my role anymore. Then something shifted again. My dad started calling just to ask how work was going. No agenda, no ask, just conversation. My mom sent me a picture of a pie she baked and said she used the recipe I sent her last year, and it actually turned out okay. That was it. No hidden meaning, no follow-up. It felt strange, like we were learning how to speak to each other from scratch. They didn't thank me for the money I'd given. Not directly, but they stopped circling me like I was a resource. They stopped assuming. And that made one person very uncomfortable. Uncle Mike. He noticed before I did. He was the kind of person who thrived on imbalance, on knowing who owed who had leverage, who could be nudged or guilted into picking up the slack. My withdrawal disrupted that ecosystem. Suddenly, there was less to comment on, less to joke about, less to take credit for by association. And he didn't like it. The first jab came during Easter. I hadn't planned on going. It was still too soon after the side door incident, and I was prepared to skip it. Then Dave called. He said things had cooled down and Megan wanted to talk. I didn't fully believe him, but I went. Part of me still hoped there was a version of this family that didn't require armor. Uncle Mike was there early, posted up like he always was, drink in hand, voice just loud enough to draw attention. He made jokes about money, about sponsors, about our family Rockefeller. Someone mentioned a possible trip to Florida, and he laughed and said, better get Michaela to book it, right? I didn't respond. I didn't need to. My dad said quietly, but clearly, knock it off, Mike. That was new. Mike smiled like he didn't hear him. Later, I went into the kitchen for water and heard my name before I opened the door. Mike was talking to my mom, saying I was holding money hostage now, that I was manipulating them with silence, that I'd changed. I walked in mid-sentence. My mom looked startled but didn't defend him. Mike turned to me and asked if I thought paying a few bills made me better than the family. I didn't answer him. I looked at my mom. She said nothing. So I left again. That night, I called Dave and told him what happened. He sighed and said something I hadn't considered. He said, I think he's jealous. You got out. Uncle Mike hadn't. 10 years with the same girlfriend, same rental, same half-formed plans. He floated through life attached to other people's stability. My change threatened that. The next month, my mom stopped calling again. My dad's texts got shorter. I felt the temperature drop just enough to notice, and I knew exactly who had turned the dial. This time, I didn't wait. I called my parents and asked if we could talk, just the three of us. No family crowd, no holidays, no distractions. My mom hesitated for half a second before saying yes, like she already knew what the conversation would be about and was bracing herself. They invited me over for dinner. She made lasagna, the kind she always makes when she wants things to feel normal, layered thick, too much cheese, trying to bury tension under familiarity. She kept talking about the weather, about a neighbor's new dog, about nothing at all, until I finally said it. I told them I knew Mike was in their ear again. I said I knew he was telling them I was manipulating them with money, that I was punishing them by pulling back. I said they needed to ask themselves why someone who couldn't manage his own life was so invested in controlling mine. The room went quiet. Not defensive quiet, tired quiet. My dad leaned back in his chair and rubbed his hands together the way he does when he doesn't want to admit something out loud. Then he said, we know. We've just had him in our ear for a long time." That was the moment something shifted for me. Not relief, recognition. I nodded and told them it was time to stop listening. I wasn't angry. I was done explaining myself to someone who benefited from misunderstanding me. My mom didn't argue. She just stared down at her plate like the answer had been there the whole time and she hadn't wanted to see it. I left that night without the usual heaviness. I didn't know if it would stick, but I knew I'd finally said what needed to be said. And for a while, it did stick. Mike stopped showing up. He wasn't at the next Sunday dinner. He wasn't mentioned. The silence around him felt deliberate, like someone had finally closed a door. But people like Mike don't disappear quietly. The next big test came with Megan's baby shower, her first. My mom threw herself into planning it like it was a wedding. Personalized favors, custom cupcakes, a diaper raffle with prizes that cost more than the diapers themselves. When the invitation came in the mail, pastel pink with my full name printed across the front, I stared at it for days. Part of me wanted to skip it, to protect whatever fragile balance we'd managed to build. The other part of me wanted to believe showing up still mattered. I arrived 10 minutes late on purpose. Just enough time for the room to settle. I hugged Megan, told her she looked beautiful, handed her a gift card tucked inside a designer onesie, and found a seat near the edge. Dave was there. My parents were glowing. For a while, it felt almost normal. Then Uncle Mike stood up. No warning, no invitation. Just rose from his chair with a wine glass in his hand and announced he wanted to say something about family. My stomach dropped. He talked about showing up, about real love, about how money doesn't buy connection. He never said my name, but every word was aimed at me. Megan stared at the floor. My mom fussed with a napkin. My dad didn't move. When Mike finished and sat down like he'd delivered wisdom, the room was stiff and quiet. I stood up. I said the only person using guilt in that room was him. I said he didn't get to rewrite the story because he felt threatened. I said I helped because no one else would, and he showed up only when it was convenient. I turned to my parents and told them they'd let him wedge himself into this family for years. I told them if they kept letting him steer things, they would lose more than they realized. Then I left. The next morning, my dad called. He said they had talked. He said they asked Mike to give them space, that he wouldn't be welcome at family events for a while. He said they were sorry. That apology landed heavier than anything Mike had said. Later that week, Megan texted me and said thank you for showing up, and then admitted Mike always talked down to her too. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. After the baby shower, I assumed the usual cycle would kick in. An explosion, a brief stretch of uncomfortable calm, then the slow drift back into silence. Our family had perfected that pattern over decades. I prepared myself for it. I didn't reach out. I didn't chase reassurance. I let the quiet sit where it landed. But instead of fading, something else happened. 3 days later, my mom called like nothing had gone wrong. No preamble, no emotional cushioning. She asked how work was going, mentioned that the peonies were blooming early this year, and told me she'd gotten into a British crime show because the actors talked funny. That was it. No apology hidden and rambling. No reference to Mike. Just conversation. It caught me off guard more than confrontation ever could. Then she invited me over for lunch. Just lunch. She made sandwiches and we sat outside on the deck like we had 100 times before. My dad came out halfway through and said he was glad I came. No tension, no asks. I waited for the pivot, the subtle request that usually followed, but it never came. It felt strange and familiar at the same time, like learning how to walk on a leg that had been asleep for years. The invitations kept coming. A backyard movie night for my dad's birthday, a random Wednesday ice cream run, Sunday dinners without expectations attached. Megan showed up too, waddling through her 3rd trimester like she owned every room she entered. One night she handed me a gift bag. Inside was a white onesie that said "Cool Aunt" in gold lettering. She smirked and said it was either that or financial sponsor. I laughed, not because it was clever, but because for the first time in a long while it felt like we were laughing together instead of around me. My mom started texting photos again. Flowers she planted, the cat sleeping in strange places, screenshots of recipes she wanted to try. My dad even called me after a dentist appointment just to say the hygienist remembered me and asked about the daughter who moved to the city. I didn't know how to hold all of it. Part of me wanted to believe this was real, Another part stayed guarded, waiting for the other shoe. Then came the invitation that made me stop breathing for a second. A long weekend at Lake George. 2 cabins rented. No pressure to pay for anything. Just be there. I read it 3 times, expecting a follow-up that never came. No, sorry if this is awkward. No, we know you're busy. Just an invitation. Out of habit, I offered to contribute. My mom said no. This one's on us. That landed harder than I expected. Not because I couldn't afford it, but because they didn't expect me to. That was the first time I let myself think maybe calling out Mike had cracked something open they couldn't close again. A week before the trip, an unknown number called me. I almost didn't answer. It was Uncle Mike. He didn't say hello. He asked if I really thought they'd changed. He said they were playing me, that families like ours don't actually shift. They just rearrange who's useful. I hung up. 2 minutes later, he texted me a screenshot. A group chat between him, my mom, and Megan. My name was in it. The message from my mom said she acts like she's doing us favors, like we're part of her charity project. Dated 2 weeks before the baby shower. My stomach dropped, not because it shocked me, but because of the timing. 2 weeks before the apologies. 2 weeks before the invitations. I didn't respond. I screenshotted it and sat with the weight of it. I considered not going on the trip, letting them wonder. Then 3 days later, Megan called. Not a text, a real call. She said Mike had sent her the same screenshot. She said they confronted Mom. She said Mom admitted she wrote it out of anger and regretted it. She said they wanted the trip to be real, not another performance. For the first time, I wasn't the one doing the work. And that's when I realized Mike wasn't trying to warn me. He was trying to destroy something he wasn't invited into anymore. I drove up to Lake George alone. 4 hours of highway, trees blurring past, my thoughts moving faster than the car. I kept switching between cautious hope and a dull suspicion that I was walking into something rehearsed. I'd been wrong before. I knew how quickly warmth could turn conditional. Still I went. Not because I trusted everything, but because I trusted myself enough to leave if it turned wrong. The cabins were nicer than I expected. Real wood, not the fake rustic kind. A fire pit in the center. Hammock swaying even though there wasn't any wind. Megan waved when she saw my car pull in, balancing a plate of grapes on her swollen belly like it was a party trick. You made it, she said, like my presence mattered in a way it hadn't before. My dad was at the grill. My mom asked about work. Dave made a joke about me still needing YouTube to start a campfire. It felt normal. Disarming in how normal it felt. Dinner passed without tension. No strange pauses, no sideways comments. We sat outside as the sun dropped and the lake went dark and glassy. Later, my mom asked if we could talk. Just talk. Not help her with something, not take a walk, just sit. We pulled 2 wooden chairs near the water while the others pretended to roast marshmallows and absolutely listened in. She told me she knew I'd seen the message. She said she was angry when she wrote it. Not at me exactly, but at herself. She said she resented needing me and didn't know how to sit with that without turning it into something ugly. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her hoodie pocket and said she'd written it down in case she couldn't say it right. I didn't read it then. I put it in my jacket pocket. We sat in silence watching the water move, cold air cutting through the moment yet just enough to make it feel real. Inside, we ended up on the couch watching a movie my dad picked, half asleep, half paying attention. It was peaceful. Then at 9:42 p.m., my phone buzzed. A group message from Mike. Funny how fast people forgive when they think someone might cut them off again. Attached was a photo of me and my mom by the water. The angle was wrong, too hidden. He'd been watching. I stepped outside and showed Dave the message. Within minutes, everyone was there. My dad called Mike. No answer. Megan took my phone, opened in the family group chat, posted the screenshot, and wrote, "This is what obsession looks like. We're done letting you poison everything." My mom didn't stop her. My dad nodded. Then my mom removed him from the chat. Just like that. Gone. I went back to the chair by the water, pulled out the note my mom had written, and read it. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to earn my place. 6 weeks later, the invitation came through. A simple email with the subject line "Family Reunion" finally making it happen. It was sent from my dad's address, but I knew my mom had typed every word. There were emojis sprinkled in awkwardly, the way she always does when she's trying to sound casual but hopeful. They were renting a pavilion at a local park, ordering food from the same Italian place we used to go to after graduations and birthdays, and that one retirement party for a cousin who went back to work 2 months later. There was even going to be a karaoke machine, which was mostly for my Aunt Lydia, who sings like the key doesn't matter as long as you mean it. I didn't respond right away, not because I didn't want to go, but because I wasn't sure what it would mean if I did. A lot had changed in a short amount of time. I'd drawn boundaries for the first time in my life. I'd stopped rescuing people who never said thank you. I'd stood up to someone who fed off imbalance and silence. And slowly, my family had started seeing me differently. Not as their backup plan, not as their walking solution, but as someone whose presence mattered without a price tag attached. I was afraid of stepping back into a big event where old patterns could resurface, afraid that one wrong moment would pull me back into a role I'd worked so hard to step out of. But something in me felt steadier now, less reactive, like I finally knew what I would and wouldn't tolerate. So I said yes. I showed up with nothing in my hands, no trays of desserts, no gift cards tucked into envelopes, just me in jeans and a tank top, sunglasses on my head, and an old lawn chair I found in my trunk. For the first time, that felt like enough. The pavilion was full. Cousins I hadn't seen in years, toddlers running between tables, relatives who only knew me as Tina's daughter who moved to the city. Megan was there holding her baby, who looked like a tiny, red-faced burrito with hair. Dave waved me over to a picnic table stacked with soda cans and a cake that already had fingers in it. It was chaotic, loud, imperfect, and strangely comfortable. My mom came over a little while later. She didn't make a speech. She didn't pull me aside. She just handed me a plate of food and said, "Try the eggplant. I think it's actually decent this time." It wasn't an apology. It was an offering. Mother to daughter, normal. Then my dad climbed onto a bench. Everyone groaned, expecting a toast no one asked for, but he just said he wanted to say something quick. He looked at me when he said this year had been weird, that a lot of old stuff came up, but sometimes you don't fix what you don't face. He raised his plastic cup and said to doing better, and to the people who kept showing up even when we didn't deserve it. A few people clapped, some awkwardly, some with real feeling. I didn't stand. I didn't cry. I just nodded once. No one mentioned Uncle Mike. He was the absence no one wanted to name. Later, Megan sat next to me while her baby slept against her shoulder and said she thought this was the first reunion she'd actually enjoyed. I looked around. Bad karaoke, overcooked ziti, people laughing without tension underneath it. I asked her if she thought it was real. She shrugged and said it felt more real than it ever had. That was enough. The day didn't erase the past. It didn't undo years of imbalance or silence, but it closed something. A chapter I'd been trapped in where love had to be earned and presence had to be paid for. I used to believe I had to buy my way into belonging. Now I just show up, and the people who matter show up too.